Buddy, it's nice to see you all again. Tonight we have something to celebrate. First off, it is Juneteenth, a holiday that, like much real American history, and I'll talk about that in a few moments, no one taught me about in school. But like most of you, I did eventually learn about this celebration, the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the end of Black enslavement in the United States. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th of that year that Union soldiers landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free, some 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Juneteenth today celebrates African American history and achievement, and in the wake of renewed awareness of the underlying systemic racism and inequality in our nation, the growth of its recognition is both important and wonderful. We also have other reasons to celebrate this week on the heels of two important Supreme Court decisions. In the case that we spoke about with the ACLU's Jay Kaplan last week on welcoming Shabbat, Bostock versus Clayton County, the court held 6-3 that an employer who fires an individual merely for being gay or transgender violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And though little discussed, this case is going to have far-reaching implications for other acts of discrimination against LGBTQ people. Finally, in a case considering DACA, the policy of deferred action for childhood arrivals that was instituted by President Obama, allowing as many as 800,000 people to pursue meaningful lives in this country, even as their immigration status remains in limbo, the court ruled that the current administration could not end that program as they had announced they would. For those of you unfamiliar with our congregation's activism, immigrant and refugee rights occupy a central pillar of our concerns. We look forward to the day when DACA recipients and others who are seeking it will enjoy full citizenship. There is still so much work to do, and as it is rightly pointed out, all of this activism is a movement, not a moment. But nevertheless, when there is a time to celebrate, we should. So happy Juneteenth and mazel tovs all around to our DACA friends who are breathing sighs of enormous relief, and to members of the LGBTQ community who are now free from employment discrimination. We begin our celebration of Shabbat with Lecha Dodi.
Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki et habracha in mehia, v'simcha berina u'v'tzohala, v'nei Shabbat nekabla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, v'nei Shabbat nekabla. Lecha dodi likrat kala.
My husband Arthur, who's sitting to my right, will now light the Shabbat candles for us. Arthur, why don't you go ahead and start the song?
Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch Baruch Haor Shabbat.
We continue with this reading. Tonight we come together in an attempt to gain perspective on where we have been and where we are going. We may feel fragile, we may feel alone, yet we remain connected as we search for strength, for community, for gratitude. On this Shabbat, may we lengthen our perspective. May we find the space to question and explore. Together, we share the challenge of an ever-changing world, a world beyond our control. Together, we seek to find meaning, calm our anxieties, understand our purpose. Together, we share the burden and blessing of responsibility. Together, we are a community. Let us rejoice in that bond as we celebrate Shabbat. Once again, because the sound was off, if you're experiencing any problem with the broadcast, let us know in the chat box because we want to know. Everything looks good on our end, though. And we're going to continue now with Yesh Makom, There's a Place.
There's a place with answers we are seeking. There's a place to find our light of hope. Where's the strength to realize our vision? Yesh makom betocheinu. Yesh makom betocheinu. Look within yourself, you'll find it there. There's a place with wisdom that can guide us. There's a place where we know what's right or wrong. Where's the path to peace that we all long for? Yesh makom betocheinu. Yesh makom betocheinu. Look within yourself, you'll find it there.
Eleanor Roosevelt wrote, "The encouraging thing is that every time you meet a situation, though you may think at the time it is an impossibility, and you go through the tortures of the damned, once you have met it and lived through it, you find that forever after you are freer than you ever were before. If you can live through that, you can live through anything. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. The danger lies in refusing to face the fear, in not daring to come to grips with it. If you fail anywhere along the line, it will take away your confidence. You must make yourself succeed every time. You must do the thing you think you cannot do." Let's continue with Afo Ori.
Ori, ori bi, tikvati, tikvati bi, kochi, kochi bi. strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you.
Looking ahead at next week's Welcoming Shabbat, our guest will be Mr. Kenneth Bob, the Executive Director of Amenu, a progressive Zionist organization who will talk about events in Israel, particularly upcoming considerations to annex parts of the occupied territories. We will also discuss Mr. Bob's efforts to censure Morton Klein of the ultra-right-wing Zionist Organization of America over his recent incendiary and racist remarks, tweeted and also published in other places. The following Friday, July 3rd, we will be off, as I and undoubtedly many of you and millions of others will be tuning in to Lin-Manuel Miranda's masterpiece, Hamilton. This week, I want to share a few thoughts about the times we are living through, particularly the increased awareness and protests about systemic racism in our nation. When the pandemic first began, some historians pointed out that in its wake, we might very well find ourselves in a much transformed society. At the time, I did not really understand how. I recognized, of course, that the pandemic would lay bare the undeniable injustices and inequalities in our society, to which far too many of us, cocooned in our safe worlds, have paid sufficient attention. What I did not see was how it might bring about any real transformation. The mass protests awoke me to the prophetic insights of the historians. Pandemics, it turns out, have a way of clearing out the background noise of our lives, of forcing us to focus on the urgency of our problems and the necessity of change. That's what's happening now. As a result, change is in the air. Through these uprisings, we are once again being challenged to re-educate ourselves, to more fully understand, appreciate, and internalize the real history of this nation. And if we have not already done so, it's past time. Like most Americans, I was simply never taught the real history of my country, certainly not the significant and courageous history of Black Americans, about whom there was little more than an account of slavery, Civil War, and civil rights bills. I remember just a few years ago setting foot for the first time in the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, and feeling simultaneously amazed and overwhelmed by what I was learning. My amazement came with the realization that 400 years of Black history was filled with uncountable stories of strength, hope, courage, wisdom, creativity, and forbearance that far exceeded anything that our schools were teaching or are teaching even today, decades after my high school graduation. My feeling of being overwhelmed was a result of not having learned much of anything I was experiencing in all of my years in school. Of course, subsequently, this failure was as much my own as that of my teachers. Even as I consider myself progressive and supposedly enlightened, I now forced myself to confront my almost willful personal ignorance. These stories have always been there. I need only to have searched to find them. Though importantly, the stories of Black Americans are not only stories of suffering. A community with so much greatness also has so much to celebrate. There is no doubt that they have been and continue to be framed by the systemic and systematic racism that have not for one moment loosened their grip. The human rights violations of Black Americans are not new. What is new is that they are rising to the top of our society's agenda. Finally. The historians who said that the pandemic would present us with one or more societal reckonings could not have been more right. Change is coming, and now is the time to decide whether we will be forces for positive change or not. The rise in concern for fairness and equality comes with tests for non-Black people. Among these is the requirement that we drop our self-defensiveness, that we open our minds, that we refuse to react in knee-jerk ways when confronted by ideas we find challenging, that upon hearing calls like defund the police, we begin to appreciate the reasons for these proposals and to fully understand what they mean, that we join the forces of light and goodness and cease to rely upon what we think we know or knew about our history and the stories about our fellow citizens. Change is indeed coming, and it is far past time. Now is the time for listening, learning, and for actively taking up the cause of anti-racism. If you have not done so before, now is the time to declare, as the sign that you're seeing over my shoulder indicates, Black Lives Matter. That is, after all, what Tikkun Olam is about, is it not? Like so many Americans, I was raised with this idea of American exceptionalism, the notion that our country's greatness derived from its fantastic institutions and forms of democracy. I no longer embrace this idea. Frankly, I haven't for a long time. Today, though, I do point to some form, a different kind, of American exceptionalism, to the ways in which this country is actually great. And they are located directly in America's amazing diversity. In a nation whose land was appropriated from its indigenous inhabitants and which was built upon the stolen labor of Black people, there can be only one road to redemption. In order for it to lead us there, we must pave it with the realization that only a genuine celebration of our diversity can make us really great. How do we do that? By uplifting all of our citizens through equal rights and equal opportunities and equal justice, and by freedom from fear, freedom from want. To those who say, and Jews are too often among them, that we weren't here for all those really bad parts of American history. We didn't create this system. I say this. When our families came here, all of this became ours too. With our arrival, we were handed the responsibility to make this place better than we ourselves found it, and better than it's ever been for multitudes of others who for centuries have been barred from enjoying its potential. So that's my message tonight. As the Talmud says, Tzeh u'lemad, go and learn. Let's do it together, and let us pledge our lives and our fortunes, to paraphrase the founders, to ensuring that what we now know brings true justice to our land. Thank you. We'll continue now with a reading by the humanistic philosopher A.C. Grayling. There is a kind of courage required for the task of being human, the courage to meet the new and to accept the different in the chances of experience. Rilke gave luminous expression to this idea by saying that we need courage for the most strange, the most singular, and the most inexplicable that we may encounter. He meant the courage to accept love when it offers, to face death when it comes, to bear the burdens that life imposes in return for its gifts, and above all, the courage to create something to mark our own individual responses to the world, however modest. For even when the courage to do this is unostentatious and private, it can make a crucial difference to the content of the quality of our lives. Let's continue with Naaseh Shalom.
Naaseh shalom, shalom ba'olam. Naaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru shalom. Naaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru shalom. Naaseh shalom, shalom ba'olam. Naaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru shalom.
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who have been wronged. Tonight, we extend these well wishes to members of our community and their loved ones, to Cece Stone, Joan Mann, Patty Becker, Julie Eliasson, Titus Mendel, Karen Tremper Harris, Robert Liebhaber, Larry Fisher, Jennifer Breen, Anne-Marie Kersniak, Greg Lowenthal, and Myron Tink. May all who suffer know that they are not alone. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. We continue with refuah shlema.
Kom ha'koach betocheinu, korot ha'bracha michevroteinu. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Shalom. Mekom ha'koach betocheinu, mekorot ha'bracha michevroteinu. May those in need of healing know refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Shalom.
Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, our community mourns the recent death of longtime member Isabel Vander and of the beloved mother of Barbara Logan, who together with her husband Fran Shore mourn Barbara's mother, Marilyn, Mickey, and Logan. We observe the yahrzeits of Irving Pinkney, Abe Meisner, Paul Kadish, Anna Sherbin, Cecile Plafkin, Belle Radner, Aviva Tepley, Milton Vidra, Sheldon Glass, Nathaniel Coburn, Lillian Finkelstein, Jean Rottenberg, and Margaret Stawicki. Yehi zichram livracha, may memories of these precious people provide us with moments of comfort as we walk this world in their absence. So that's our service tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll come back next week and every week, not July 3rd, however. Sorry for any technical problems we had. Sometimes it's not under our control. Occasionally it's YouTube's fault. So we're just going to go ahead and blame them. Right, Arthur? Right. Okay. We're going to conclude tonight with the special Hine Matov that we introduced not long before the pandemic forced us out of our home. It's about being together, about living as one people hand in hand. We can't be hand in hand right now. But as Vera Lynn, who died this week, and whom we will remember because her song, her music gave us hope in this pandemic, once said, musically, we'll meet again. Tonight's closing song, Hine Matov.
Matov naim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov naim shevet achim gam yachad. Behold how good it is when people dwell together, living as one people hand in hand. What keeps us safe and strong is that we have each other, one human family across the land. Hine matov naim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov naim shevet achim gam yachad.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.